Hi, I'm just gonna jump right in. So I think that a lot of the stereotypical gender differences that were in the textbook are some that we kind of have accepted to be true in our society. So that girls, for example, are more social, closer with their parents, internalize blame, and have more issues with self-esteem, whereas males are more independent, less likely to show off their emotions, maybe more aggressive, and when they are angry, they show that externally. Um, so I've actually always thought that that more or less comes uh, from our society and how we've raised our children with gender roles and gender norms, and so that was kind of confirmed by the gender schema theory. I think I'm saying that right. But so I think that we have these ideas that, for example, boys will be boys, where it's expected that men will be more external with their anger, or I've seen a lot of men kind of push back against crying, or boys are told that they can't cry, or if they do something, they might get like taunted or teased and called a little girl. Whereas girls are expected to be a little bit more feminine with the way they act, and so I think that that plays a huge, huge part in how our gender differences are today. And of course, I think, anyways, that you can see the differences in that with people who aren't cisgendered. So, um, somebody who is trans or non binary is going to be a lot less likely to conform to those gender norms, at least in my personal experience knowing people and from the limited knowledge I have on that. Um, and I think that comes from breaking out of those traditional, um, not traditional, but old fashioned and kind of previously frowned upon roles. Now that it's becoming more and more accepted, it's also becoming more accepted for people to break out of those gender norms. So, yeah. And then that brings us to differences in delinquency. So, obviously, there's a difference in males and females being charged for crimes and whatnot. And so, what I thought was really interesting in the reading was the idea that, excuse me, that there was actual increase in violence and drug use in girls, but that it hadn't really been recorded, and there was a lot more favoritism with women, or girls, I guess. And so I thought it was interesting that they kind of touched on how getting rid of that prejudice and kind of that favoritism would probably change up the way that we have that gap, and it would kind of equalize the way that those numbers come out. I think the way to go about um, closing that gap would be, uh, yeah, similar to those lines, and kind of having more policies in place to make sure that those differences aren't um, as apparent in data. So we see that kind of thing with a lot of different identities. So obviously, there's a whole problem right now in our country with police brutality against African Americans or against people of color, and so it's something that I wasn't surprised to read was affecting genders as well. And so, yeah, so that is about all I have on this topic. Thanks.